Welcome to Minding the Gap, another episode from Behavioral Sciences. I'm Paul Bakke, licensed counselor with Behavioral Sciences of Alabama, and I'm with Dr. David Barnhart. Good morning and welcome to Election Day.
Good morning. Yeah, this is, by the way, it's also my birthday today.
Well, happy birthday.
So November 3rd and Election
Day. I know that. That's right. Okay.
So I get two loads off in one day. It's really amazing. Mark a year and get an election over with. What a gift.
Well, this is a big day, not only because it's your birthday, but because a lot of people are pretty stressed out about the election.
They are. And, you know, I think I read this morning that something like 100 million people had already voted before Election Day.
Yeah, it sounds like it's going to be a record.
That's a couple of people,
It's been a big push by a lot of organizations to vote. And then there's a lot at stake because there's some very different agendas on the platform. So
do you have some impression that there's some disagreement about things?
I have just a tiny bit of suspicion that there's some disagreement about some certain things. And we've talked about it before on the podcast that, we have a kind of a snap judgment sort of society that's really reinforces some of those things with social media, with Twitter and Facebook and things like that, where people get really divided very easily. And we're talking a lot about stress and all the things that it does to divide us, from ourselves with our own behaviors that don't help, but also in relationships. So I thought maybe today we could talk about some ideas of how to go about having conversations with people that you don't agree with, maybe even in your family coming up for the holidays.
Oh, like Thanksgiving coming up or something, huh?
Like Thanksgiving. That's right.
We're gonna have Thanksgiving dinner, and Uncle Earl will be there. We're gonna have a conversation with him.
That's right. We may not agree. So
we may not.
So one thing that we've talked about, and I shared it in my PowerPoint, was how when we are triggered by some idea that is against our belief system, or that we don't agree with, or is some kind of threat to something important to us, the immediate response is that we have these chemicals that go through our bodies and our brains, and it creates a feeling of alert and prepare for defense.
Right.
And so I think one of the things to talk about is to be aware of that feeling that says, I really want to go into combat mode with my relative or my friend or my coworker or whoever about this issue. And what tends to happen in those moments when you get into combat mode is nothing really productive happens. Nobody's really listening to each other.
Right. So we get triggered and we don't realize how quickly we may become flooded. And we stop being rational, even though we're thinking. And
and we may even have a good point.
Oh, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. We just want to hammer it in.
Yes, but because we're flooded, and what you're talking about, this threat detection system that we have, when we recognize it, then our emotions kick in as well, and the tendency then takes about 40 milliseconds for the behavior to kick in, and we're talking or saying things or making a facial expression or some indication that is counter to whatever it is that we've heard. And when you see this in like in therapy, working with a couple, there have been times when I've asked couples to wear a pulse watch. and we set the alarm to go off at 100, a pulse rate of 100, right? So they're here having a conversation with each other about an area that's a problem, and all of a sudden their watch starts to beep, and they go, "Oh, what's that? What's that?" And I say, "Well, remember we set the warning to go off when the pulse got up to 100. Well, your pulse can get up to 100 and you don't realize it. You don't realize that you're flooded because it's wired in. It's so automated. And it's interesting that when you do something like watch your pulse rate in that what would be a flooded situation, you can begin to regulate your response and calm down. And so you can see if you've got some way of checking, some way of getting feedback on, hey, you may be getting too upset to really have good communication here. When people can keep their heart rate down, as odd as that may sound, they can actually often get through conversations. It's pretty interesting to watch.
And the whole idea is that it's going against our nature to pause and to recognize and to see 100, regulate. It really, unless we've really practiced it over and over, and we've created an instinct, because we can do that.
We can do
But
that.
it really is against our just basic instincts to upset, get into combat mode, say something, and then, how many times you say later after you calm down, I can't believe I said that. Why, what was I thinking?
Yeah, I wish I could.
Combat mode. You were trying to win. So one of the books that we recommend quite a bit, it's called 7 Principles of Making Marriage Work by John Gottman.
Absolutely.
We talk about, or he talks about in there, the soft startup. That a harsh startup is the very first start of a problem in any kind of conflict, whether it's a marriage, whatever, really. That when it starts harshly, then defenses are on the verge.
All automatically. It's not a character flaw. It's just how we're built. Now we get upset when somebody responds and we think of it as a character flaw, but it's not a character flaw. Now, maybe there are some things about our characters we need to work on, but that's kind of a wired in piece. And so Gottman talks about the difference between a complaint and a criticism. So when you're talking about harsh startup, generally that would be a criticism.
You always do this.
Mm-hmm.
You're just like your daddy in a bad way.
Excellent.
It's going right to the heart, right to your character, right to you're a pattern of behavior that's not good. And I'm going to tell you about it, how bad it is right now. And that's not what we mean to do. We don't mean to do that. What we mean to say is we don't like what you just said. We don't appreciate that. That's what we really mean, but we, go right to, you always do this, why do you do that? That's think about that question. When you ask your kid, why didn't you do what I just told you to do? Is there any answer to that?
Well,
I thought about it for a few minutes and I thought, I'd really rather do this. And I thought you wouldn't mind. And then mom says, oh, okay. Well, thanks for telling me, right? There's no answer. It's just but it's this response like, what? Because we don't understand it. Why did you do that? But insinuating is wrong. There's no excuse for it. Because if you gave an excuse and told me why and answered my question, that's going to make me madder, right? So anyway, but that's happens is we get critical. And when someone is criticized, what do we normally do? we put our foot in the sand and we go, we don't budge.
Yeah.
We resist.
Yes.
Kids do that.
Cross criticize.
Yeah. No, no, I'm not, which is a criticism of your ability to assess me.
Mm-hmm.
No, I didn't. I'm not that way. You're lying, so you're that way, and it's just becomes, then the next one is defensiveness. Got to defend myself against this criticism.
Mm-hmm.
And over time, if people continue this behavior, they just don't talk at all. They just don't bring it up. Stonewall.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Not gonna. Or
and
the first one before that has become this contempt.
Can get ugly.
Now it gets uglier.
Right.
Now you're just lower than dirt, and it becomes contemptuous. And then it becomes, okay, I'm not even gonna go there with you. So the first part of that process is really practicing, and we all need to do this because we're going to encounter people that are polar opposite of what we believe politically. We got relationships that we have to work on. We got people that we work with. It's it's hard to deal with. We have different personalities, and the normal thing to do is to get flooded and to criticize and to be combative, and being able to have a soft startup is important. So how do we do that?
Well, we really have to formulate a way of thinking. I mean, we have some strategies that we teach people how to be assertive, how to, if you have a complaint, how to complain so that it's not a criticism. And there are a lot of skills that make it softer, that enable us to let the conversation go further.
One of them in couples that Gottman talks about is assuming the best of each other. Just walking into this relationship, this conversation, this daily interaction with assuming the best. My partner, my coworker, my whoever it is that I'm with did not wake up and decide that they were going to do something to peeve me off today. That they're doing the best they can. I don't agree with their stance. They've got different beliefs than I do. We do things differently, but they've got something important to say, and they're not trying to just be a jerk. And I think that's the same thing with we've talked about Jonathan Haidt in the book Righteous Mind. He talks about the different political views, and it's really the same idea that he talked about in the end of the book, is assuming that everybody has something important to say. Even if you don't agree, it's coming from some level of importance that has some value. And if we approach our family members that way, our spouses that way, our boyfriends and girlfriends, our kids, that assuming the best of them, and that they have something important to say and that they're important, then that helps us have a soft startup, because you don't see them as an enemy.
Well, it's a poor strategy for another reason to have harsh startup or to use criticism, because what we know, it predicts defensiveness. But if you were trying to have an influence on somebody, if you were wanting them to at least understand what your perspective is, they're not going to hear that if you're evoking defensiveness. And what you're doing is really helping them practice be defensive. So it makes it harder for them. You're actually reinforcing their tendency to be defensive and not be open. So it's like shooting yourself in the foot,
Right.
So really, it would be better off not to say anything.
Yeah. And so, and can I share my screen here?
Yeah.
One of the things that I did last week on the podcast was I did the presentation, and you asked me to come up with.
Did you
come up with? I did it. Yeah.
Did you
just
do
thought of
it?
Okay.
Oh my
So,
gosh.
so we
Okay.
have an area, whether it's ourselves or another person. So the emotion's as
Uh-huh.
big as the elephant. So how do we influence an irritated elephant to change directions? If it's ourselves, then we need to calm ourselves down. If it's another person, then we need to be a person that's calm to influence another person, because we're not going to, because we're trying to get them to change directions, either ourselves or someone else. So of course, Yoda speaks elephant. So your open demeanor accomplishes goals, cooperation, wanted feelings, safety from harm, realistic strategies in the gap. What do you think about
Okay.
that?
Okay. This is good. So for if you missed the conversation, the challenge was come up with an acronym for Yoda. And
So I
Paul
did
has
it.
done that. Your open demeanor accomplishes goals, cooperation, wanted feelings, safety from harm, realistic strategies in the gap. Nice
There we
work.
go.
Nice work. You did it.
All right.
You're the acronym master of behavioral sciences.
Okay, so there we go. So there's this again. So then, okay, what we're talking about is if we want to change thinking and behavior against our accumulated instincts, as we've talked about that, we've got all these instincts that we've accumulated over time, beliefs, behaviors, all these kinds of things that happen. Learning to soothe ourselves in the gap is a big help. Be able to calm ourselves down.
Yes. Yes.
If we can self-soothe in stressful conditions, we have a chance to be a soothing influence for others in times of stress, conflict, and disagreements. We work together best when no one feels threatened. So that's really kind of what we're talking about.
That's right. That's right. And it takes practice.
It takes practice.
Yeah. We can't stress that enough. It's not enough that we just changed our mind. Our brains and our behavior, it's not like a light switch that you flip. I mean, you might have a good idea comes to mind. You say, "Oh, I'm going to change that." But really, it's implementation, meaning I really need to look for the opportunities to use this, and I need to simulate it in order to practice it. So I'm prepared when that opportunity comes up to respond in a way that keeps conversation going with somebody. If it's important for me to have a relationship with somebody, then I want to care for that relationship. I want to foster it. I don't want to do things that create gaps.
Right. Well, let's talk a little bit about the complaint strategy. Okay, so the complaint strategy has three components to it. I feel, this is an I thing. This is me, not you are doing this wrong, criticism, but I feel hurt, frustrated, disrespected, whatever the feeling is. I feel that when specific situation, not you always do this, you're never home, it's piling it all up, this pattern of who you are, and it's all bad. It's when you raise your voice to me, I feel scared, feel disrespected, feel whatever those feelings are, and I would prefer
not as opposed to you make me feel.
You make me feel right. You make me
I feel
terrible. I feel this way when this happens, and I would prefer, or I would like. So you're giving them tell them your feelings. Like, if somebody argues with you about your feelings, then really the conversation's over, because they don't know how you feel. If you just say, I feel this way, that's not a threat to anybody. That's just, I feel this way. You're listing a specific thing that's happened, so you're not creating a big wagon full of stuff. It's just specific, and you're giving the person the goal. I would prefer if you did this. I would prefer if you called me when you're going to be late. My wife did that when I first started working. And I was on to work, and I would come home late a lot because I'd get talking to somebody, all that stuff. She said, I want you to practice. I want you to practice. She said, she literally did this. This was 20 something years ago. She said, I want you to practice. Hold on a second. I need to call my wife and tell her that I'm going to be a little bit late. She said, I said, okay, I'll do that. No. She said, no, I want you to practice. She would say, hold on a second. I got to call my wife, let her know that I'm going to be a little bit late. And that was good. So she gave me what she wanted me to do. And she had me practice it.
Yeah.
And I did. And so I was able to either go, okay, I really don't need to talk to this person. I need to get home, or hold on a second. I need to call my wife and let her know I'm going to be late.
Yes. Very good. Very good.
So anyway,
she's good at teaching people how to act.
She's a really good teacher. Yes,
she is
really well. So anyway, it's that complaint kind of format is conducive to what you want a lot more than you're doing what I don't like and you're terrible for it, in so many words.
So it's possible to get through a conversation. We really need to prepare ourselves to be able to do that. What you were demonstrating was practicing the skill. So even using the language, even using the words, trains the brain. So you get to say it, and then when the circumstance comes up, you've increased the probability you're going to do it, that you'll actually say, oh, wait, hang on a second, I need to call my wife and let her know I'm going to be late.
Yeah, it's effective.
Yes, it is. Yeah, and so we do that all the time, and we train kids, with social skills. Parents are accustomed to doing some of this, and they'll do it in real time. And in the South, you hear this sometimes. So if I have a parent and a kid in the office at the same time, and I'm chatting with the kid, the parent will say, and the kid will go, and the parent will
Yes,
go,
sir.
yes, sir. and the kid will go, yes, sir. And so they're modeling it. Now on the side, in those cases, I'll talk to the parent and I'll say, yeah, practice. That's okay. Practice that somewhere else. But in here, I really want this kid just to feel free to talk. Okay. I don't want him saluting either. So, so let's
I really appreciate you saying that.
Yeah.
You don't have to. It's okay.
Yeah.
Give you
Right.
not to
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. But that's an example of, prompting. And I recall a situation where my boy was in the second grade. Okay, now he's not in the second grade anymore.
He's a little bit older and taller.
He's like 46, okay, or something like that. So but when he was in the second grade, he had a male teacher, and he was. My son's name is David, so I wasn't creative enough to come up with, suggesting another name, so I used the same name as mine. But David was engaged in some kind of activity that was for like gifted kids or something, and so he missed lunch. And when he went back to class, he didn't tell his teacher. And so he didn't get lunch all day. And so he was, upset about it. And I said, well, you practice, talking to the teacher about it. And so we practiced it there. And then the next day I went to school with him and had a conversation with the teacher and David. And I said, so I want you to practice telling your teacher, it was a male teacher, I missed lunch and I had him practice it right there. The teacher was very nice, very cooperative with that. And so that was, one of those lessons that you want kids to be an agent. You want them to be able to navigate the system and point out when
Tell
their
people
needs
what they
aren't met.
need.
Exactly. Yeah.
Be able to say, it's okay for me to say, I'm hungry.
Exactly.
You don't have to
Exactly.
just suck it up and be a good soldier the rest of the day.
That's right.
And just be hangry.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
Mhm.
Yes. We all know that one, don't we?
Yeah. Well, back to the old politics and the election. I
Yeah.
think that's we've talked about conflict and
Mhm.
complaints and learning how to navigate that and practicing it. We want to just really encourage everybody to think. You recognize, number one, that we're going to be a little on edge. There's going to be either way it goes, there's going to be conflict and stress.
Mhm.
And to navigate it, we're best if we are aware of the chemicals that are produced when we get upset and we hear things
Mhm.
that are different, whether it's at the Thanksgiving table or with a friend or a coworker or whatever it is, and to be cognizant of that and to sort of practice some self-soothing
Mhm.
strategies that help us be able to just talk
Right.
to people, because we have a lot more in common
We
as
do.
human beings than we don't.
Yeah. And we might have turkey and dressing.
Americans.
We may have turkey and dressing in common,
That's right.
and we want to focus on those valued activities like
Yep.
pass the turkey and dressing. So that's a good example, and that is self-soothing, and breathing is certainly one of the things we can do to recognize those. In addition to that, what we focus our attention on are valued activities. So if we think about when we're in those situations, what is the important thing, if it's family or relationships that we're
Being
concerned about?
together. Being
Yes.
together.
Yeah. Being
Being,
together.
being
So
alive another year.
show interest in the other person's activities. We can focus attention on those and then emphasize our common ground. And I think maybe in our country, we can remember that the other people who are living here are also a part of this country,
Yeah.
other Americans.
How many times do we engage in a conversation with somebody at the ball game or in another setting, and it's very cordial, you have a lot of things to say, and it's very nice, and you have no idea what their political views are.
Right.
And then you find out what their political views are, and all of a sudden that changes in your mind sometimes, like, well, that person was nice. I don't understand.
Yeah.
I agreed with them on these other things. We had a really nice conversation.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, people are just different that way. And so, but I think the point you just made is that we have so many things that we do have in common.
Mm-hmm.
That that's the valued thing, is to focus on what unites us. And that's really what this podcast is about, is finding those gaps that's created by stress, whether it's political views, social issues, pandemic, normal stressful work kind of situations and living kind of things, and be able to navigate the gaps and unify each other at the same time. It takes some doing.
Right.
The easiest thing is to just react and put the wall up.
So let's maybe encourage people to think about those areas of commonality and focus attention on those, and be prepared to pause and move toward the things that we can pay attention to that keep our relationships close. And then, in that case, we're more likely to be influential.
That's right.
If you find somebody is a fan of the same football team, you can be a little more positive about them, even if they have a different political view.
That's right.
There's some common ground.
Well, I think that's a good place for us to wrap it up. And so I want to encourage everybody to subscribe to the podcast, review, rate, give feedback, topics you'd like to hear. We'd love to hear from you. Hopefully we can grow our audience and help some people think about some things that'll help you in your life.
Yes. And we hope to see them again.
All right. Well, everybody have a good day.
Thanks, Paul. I stopped recording.